All right, what's up, everybody out there? Make sure you can hear me. Make sure we're all good. I never really know when this mic is working or not working. All right, good. Thank you, Coach Lucci. Oregon Coast, love it. Michael Pointer, how are you, sir? Boomer Sooner. Jim Ross in the house. Hanging in there, not too bad. 1 week at a time, trying to figure out what we're going to do moving forward. Uh, trying to get used to getting things done. One of the things I was going to talk about tonight was trying to figure out how you need to get things done and how we can get things done. Um, in the new settings that we're in, depending on the school you're at with the type of kids you had or the type of kids you have. Sorry, Tom Drago, how are you, bud? No, I won't be doing anything crazy for the 4th of July, Jack. I'm sure there's some type of barbecue or something going on, probably at my in law's house, but nothing crazy here. Not a fireworks guy, not into anything like that. So I'll just be relaxing a little bit. Um, Got to do yard work tomorrow. So I'll start the day off mowing the lawn and taking care of some other stuff, but nothing crazy. Now, hopefully at night, if there's stuff going on in the neighborhood or whatever else, I don't think most of the major fireworks shows have been canceled, but I wouldn't mind sitting out on the back porch and watching some fireworks tomorrow night. But I'm not a fireworks person myself. They always kind of scare me. Seen too much dumb shit growing up. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some burgers and dogs and all kind of stuff going on. Great weekend to barbecue, which obviously during the summer it's always a good week to barbecue, but 4th of July and barbecues usually go hand in hand. I'm sure there'll be some adult beverages drank at some point or another by many people. And hopefully somewhere along the weekend there's some football somewhere, that whether it be football conversations or football videos or YouTube or Zoom clinics or anything else. Hopefully there'll be some football out there somewhere. Just did uh, just did another podcast last night for a group, the Coaches Lounge, and then got asked by, I can't always think of the guy's name, but we did a chalk war about beginning of April, somewhere around there when coronavirus first started out, and I went on and did that. He wants to do another one, and then next week or a week and a half from now, I'm doing a Zoom meeting with coaches from Germany. So hopefully for everybody out there, there's some ball going on this weekend and some good stuff to talk about. And, hopefully everybody's getting closer to what we need to do. I know it's been strange for us, at least for me, trying to do things in a setting where you're trying to get ready to play. Uh, the regular season in the spring, Tom, that would be interesting. No, Jack, we never go under center. We don't take a victory snap under center. We don't do anything goal line under center. We are never, ever under center. For us, for the types of kids that we have at the school that I'm at, it is a place where you want to be doing things as much as possible, and you want the kids to be learning by doing. You don't want to be in a lot of settings that are explanations, kind of talk through walkthroughs. You'd like to be doing things. And right now we're in a situation where we really can't compete against anybody. We can't, we can't have a look out there. So, yesterday we started talking about run fits within our 3-3 stack, and I'm trying to talk to, the 6 guys in the box, defensive linemen and linebackers and backups and guys that are there. We're trying to, we're lined up on a spacer so that we are more than certainly 6 feet apart from each other. And, anybody that's not in is backed up, 6-8 yards behind. And I'm trying to talk to these kids about run fits. And after about, yeah, I'd be okay with that, Phil. I've had guys not shake my hand before, but I'm cool with that either way. It was one of those deals where you're going through your run fits and you got the kids on a spacer, and as you get into about 5 minutes of the conversation talking about block rec and block destruction and how we need to fit different runs, you could already start to see, the look on their face where they're starting to wander off a little bit. It's 90, 95 degrees. They just ran, so they're hot and they're tired. But there's a certain type of kid that, we all have ways in which we learn. There's, kinesthetic, there's visual, there's auditory, and we just happen to be at a place where a lot of our kids are more hands-on kinesthetic, where we would have to physically be going through run fits to learn how to fit runs better, and they would pay more attention that way than they would in a walkthrough setting on a spacer when you're trying to explain them. All right, guys, with during a pandemic like we're in right now, and we can't have an offense out there, and we can't do any reps, we can't put our hands on anybody or anything, and we can line up on this spacer and make sure we're 6 feet apart and talk about our alignments in a 3-3 stack and talk about our run fits. And but for kids, especially the kids at our school, that's after about 5 minutes they start to kind of wander off into a different place. Can't do any meetings right now with boards. We can't be inside our locker room. You can't sit kids in a classroom and have meetings. So, you're out on the field doing meetings on, walkthroughs on a spacer, trying to talk about run fits. And our kids just really aren't built for that. It's not great for them. And so it makes it kind of tough. And now you got to find different ways to implement your offense and your defense in a manner in which, might not be the greatest for your kids, but you really don't have a choice. So, I think everybody that's getting back now, and if you're going back this week, last week, 2 weeks ago, a week from now, I think what everybody's going to start learning is we're now, every coach is now kind of stressed to be a little bit different in how they present information and how they get the information to their players to kind of figure out what your players like. We're able to throw routes right now, and we went over some run game steps with our backs, but trying to teach inside zone and wide zone to running backs when you don't really have anything to read other than a coach giving you a read and trying to get them, you're just working on steps and you're working on mesh points and things like that. But every 2 reps, you're cleaning a ball and you're wiping a ball down, and you got 6 balls out there that you're rotating through. And, it just makes it tougher and tougher to get your work done. And when you can't really run, or install the entire offense in a segment where you can get everybody together and take a look at inside zone against different fronts, even if it's on bags. We could never be full pads in the summer in Florida, but we could have some bags out there, and we could have kids lined up to where a front would be, and we could talk about reading the front. And now we can't even do that. So, to go through just steps with inside zone and wide zone and the mesh point and all that, it's important. The kids need to understand it, but you lose their attention real quick, and it's hard to keep them motivated on what you're doing. Not with our kids, Tom. We are not better off doing Zoom meetings. No way. We had 60 or 70% of our kids, it took them almost 2 weeks to get hooked up virtually with computers and what they need to do and get them online to do their stuff. I certainly think Zoom meetings is a great way to go about certain things. But now that we're back working out and doing things on the field, we need to do as many things hands on as we can possibly do. Um, our kids are not. We are not good with meetings. We are not great on the board. We are not great. Certainly not great with virtual stuff or Zoom stuff. I just happen to have kids that are very, very hands on, and they need to be doing things, which I think a lot of high school kids are. But I've been at 3 different schools now. And the first school I was at, we could watch film for hours. We could meet for hours. Um, those kids were very much into that. They were very much into the schematics behind things. They were very much into um, the whys and the hows of what we were doing. And the place that I'm at now, the kids are really more into just playing football. They really don't care that much about the intricacies behind what we're doing. They just want to kind of play. They've always been kids that have enjoyed playing and have been told to just see ball, get ball, and trying to teach run fits and trying to teach block rec and block destruction. All that stuff is a little bit tough, but you learn as a coach. Like I learned going from place to place that all places are not the same. And if you think that you can, what advice I can give you as a coach is if you think you can just take your practice plan, your meetings, your system, and implement it anywhere, I can tell you through experience that is not true. That is, for the 3 places that I've been, they were 3 distinct places, and what we did at one place does not work at the other. How we installed, met, and watched film at one place is not great at another place. When you get a chance to coach at some different schools, you kind of find out the hard way that outside of schematics, now we're not talking about X and O's, we're talking about practices and organization and how kids learn and the settings that you're in. Everybody's got different facilities. So, it's just one of those deals where you've got to kind of change a little bit and be different in what you're doing. And now is more so the case than ever that you've got to be different right now, because we are in a situation where all the teaching is different. Everything that we're doing, and the kids just want to get back to playing football. They want to get back to being in the weight room and lifting weights. So everything that we're doing now that is more meeting information based, it just kind of annoys the kids even more, because all we're doing is talking about football, but we don't actually get a chance to play it. So, that's another big part of what's going on right now that you've got to deal with. So, analytics have played a major role in every sport. I mean, you look at the golf world now and look how much, everybody's on TrackMans and GC quads, and everybody's looking at their numbers and their spin rates and their ball speed and everything else. And, 30, 40 years ago, the Ben Hogans of the world and the Nicklaus and the Palmers, they used to feel out every shot. And, now we've got lasers for exact yardage, and we've got GPS systems for exact yardages when guys used to walk off yardages from sprinkler heads. And, so analytics and numbers and data and all that has been a huge trend and a very popular trend. Analytics in football are huge with how we look at numbers, how we evaluate stats and all those things. So, but I will say this, Jack, there are certain places where the analytics are really good and they can be used really well. And then there's other places where, you're going to run into some players that just really aren't into that. It's the same thing in the classroom as a teacher. You've got different ways to teach different kids, and, not all classes are the same. So, it's one of the things that you just learn as a coach, how to do things a little bit, differently, and how you need to adjust. And I think this is, when and hopefully, when and where this is all over, if we get back to normal, I think coaches are going to be better off for what, for what they went through, because we're going to learn different things in different ways, and we're going to learn to appreciate what we have. And I think you start to learn to appreciate what summer's all about, and the ability to install, the ability to be on bags, and maybe teach, maybe be able to teach form tackling, or just little things like that maybe you took for granted in the past. And now all of a sudden you have, now you've got a situation where you can't even form tackle a bag, and the kids, I think the kids might have taken, you take for granted the fact that you can form tackle on a bag and work on, gator roll tackles and different and hawk tackling and rugby tackles and face on tackles and angle tackles and pursuit angles and different things and taking on blocks and getting your hands on blocks or hitting a sled. And now all of a sudden you can't do any of that. And I think the kids would, I think the kids at least now should kind of appreciate, hey, when we do get back to doing things and we're doing drills that you used to think were kind of minute or minuscule, just appreciate how good those drills really were when you had a time or in your life when you couldn't do any of them. So, yes, always roll tide. Coach, what advice can you give someone on wanting to be a coach in football? Like, how do you know that you want to do it and be committed to it? I think you got to try it first. I think there's a lot of people that like the game of football and like everything about it, but I think you've got to actually try coaching first and see if you like coaching kids and see if you can, handle what it means to coach kids and understand, the situations you need to be in with how to coach and see if you like the hours, see if you like the setup of practices and games. And I think a lot of people love football. I think a lot of people love football games, but I don't know how many people really love doing head coach. What you find out the hard way is once you become a head coach, once you become a head coach, for whatever reason, you end up having to deal with so many things outside of football, or at least the X's and O's of football, that after a while you wish you could just go back and actually be an assistant coach and coach football, because that's what you love to do. So you'll never know, Jack, until you try it. You got to get involved somehow, even if it's at lower levels first, and then move your way up, whether it be Pop Warner or junior high, and then move your way up to JV or varsity or whatever. You won't know if you like it until that you like it until you do it and actually get involved in it. So however you can get involved, that'd be great. But again, it's all, we're waiting to see when we're going to start. We're waiting to see what the season's going to be like. There may be some adjustments to a season. And I think the good thing in the end is going to be that we are going to be a little bit more educated on how to do things differently, or how to do things outside of the way we always knew how to do them. The problem with football coaches is they're so regimented in systems of everything is organized this particular way, that when you take that away from them, they really have no idea how to respond or how to react. So I think all coaches are going to learn that there's different ways to do things. We got to emphasize what's important, what we need to get done, how we need to get it done. And, I think we'll take advantage in the long run of some things that maybe we didn't appreciate in before, when everything was normal. We were just, Ruben, I was just talking about that a little bit. It's definitely had an impact on us, because our kids are a little bit more hands-on from a standpoint. Kinesthetically, they need to be doing things to learn. They're not the greatest whiteboard meeting kids. They're not the greatest when you talk through block rec, block destruction, and different fronts and base. And then when we move, and then when we talk about spilling, and we talk about boxing, and we just happen to have some players, and I think most players are like this, but in general, the school that I'm at now, we would physically have to go through those things, and they would, physically have to do it in order to learn it the proper way. It's just one of those deals where it's the makeup of the kids that we have, we're just not good in meetings. We're not great in those settings. And sometimes I think our kids kind of, unfortunately, when we start meeting about things or talking about things, I think they relate it more to an educational setting, and they kind of zone out as if, why do I need to listen to this? When you would think that kids that love playing football would love to learn and listen about football. But I've been doing this for 22 years, and I firmly believe now that there are kids out there that just like playing the game of football. They don't actually like the game, or at least what's behind the game. They don't love the X's and O's. They don't love the schematics. They just love physically playing, whether it be hitting people, throwing passes, catching passes. They like the physical part of what they're doing. They don't like the chess match, which is why as coaches, we continue to coach and stay in the game of football. We can't play it anymore, but we like the schematics. We like the chess match. We like the organization. We like the schemes. We like the game plans. There's a lot of kids, I'm convinced there's a lot of kids that don't care one thing about that. They just want to go out there and run around. So it's just different when you're teaching like that. And now you don't really have a choice. There is no other way to teach because you can't. It's not to say that you're doing it one way because you think it's the best. We're doing it one way right now because we physically cannot do it another way. So we really don't have a choice. Yeah, managing adults has a lot to do with it. IBC, I agree. Yeah, staying an assistant is as long as possible is a good point. But everybody, human nature wise, wants to move up the chain. Everybody wants to get promoted. There's not a ton of money involved in it, especially in high school, but you'll make more money as a head coach than you do as an assistant. So everybody wants to, climb that ladder and make more money and get promoted and chase their dreams. So in a perfect world, I agree with you, though, IBC. The longer you could just stay an assistant and just coach a position and love football and not have to worry about all the other bullshit, the better off you'd be. Yeah, I believe coaching is a calling, and I believe it's something that you truly have to want to do. I think it's something. I think it's something you can get into if you like or you think you like it. But I feel like it's something that you really got to want to pursue, and if you're going to be good at it and stay in it for a long time. Jacob, no official announcement here yet. The state has a couple different recommendations that they're looking at. The one recommendation that right now, at least we think is going to be for certain is we were supposed to start practice July 27th, and we have a feeling we're not going to do anything before at least August 10th. And then after we start, if we get to start on August 10th, then the season will be adjusted from there. So there's a couple recommendations into the state. They haven't approved anything yet. So technically, as of right now, they say the season is still set to start July 27th with practice, but I don't see any way possible that's going to happen. I think they're just buying some time to make a decision without pissing anybody off. So as of right now, though, Jacob, we have no idea. We're just kind of preparing as if we're going to be able to do something. I think there's a possibility we have a shortened season, yes. The good thing about it now is I think we all have to take a good hard look at what we can teach and how we can teach it and what we can install and how we can install it. And we tried yesterday. We started with run fits and tried to start with our 3-3 stack with base run fits with the 6 guys in the box. And it was, like I said, it was different. It was difficult, but it's just one of those deals where anything we can do right now to get something out of it, whether we think it was good or not. The other day we started just throwing routes that are in our route tree. And then, like I said, we started with inside zone and wide zone stuff from the pistol and footwork and meshes. And, it's anything that you think can help and anything that you think you can make it move forward so that when you do get to start, you're not mass installing everything. It's just one of those deals right now that you just have to learn how you want to do it. And I think the best thing, though, for us, honestly, for the kids we have and what we're trying to do is this is certainly not a time. Now we're changing offenses. I brought in an offensive coordinator. We are going to run some inside zone, wide zone from the pistol, maybe some more tight end stuff. And so we have no choice but to do some different things on offense because we are making a change. But defensively, the one thing I know right now with our kids, I'm not going to be really doing anything different because I don't think we have the time. We didn't have a spring. There is no trial and error. There is no way to go out and maybe do some things that you learned at a clinic and find out that, whether you like them or not, or whether they fit your program or not. So the good thing for us is we've kind of stayed the same on defense. We're going to install it the way we did and play pretty much 95% of the things that we did last year with a couple wrinkles based on personnel here or there. But I think the smartest thing for everybody to understand is you have a little bit limited time as far as your installs and what you can get done. So, don't get crazy with what you're trying to put in. Just put in what you need to win football games and go from there. So I honestly think that part is going to help a lot of coaches and a lot of staffs, because I think there's some people who have a habit of overdoing it with install and schemes. And now I think this might not allow you to overdo it with install and schemes. So I think there's going to be a lot of coaching staffs that are helped by this. So, but we'll see. You never know. I mean, it looks like, we're Tom. I mean, I think every state is talking about a abbreviated state tournament or a different state tournament, or I've heard some people talk about not even having a state tournament and just playing football so that the kids don't lose out on a season, or so that they have some film or whatever to put together for recruiting. But the other thing I think you got to look at, and it stinks to look at it this way, but if we get to a point where we might be able to play, but there's a limited capacity of who can come in the stadium, there's a lot of schools that, without tickets and concessions and other things, by the time they pay officials and travel and transportation and other things, they'll end up losing a bunch of money. There's a lot of schools that if they can't sell tickets to X amount of people, that they might opt to not play football because it's a losing proposition, and there's not a lot of schools who can take on an economic loss, knowing that going in, knowing to say, all right, if we've got to pay for buses and we've got to pay for officials, and we know we've already had to deal with, whatever we've had to deal with to help with helmets and shoulder pads and however else your bills get taken care of, there's a lot of people in situations that can't take that economic loss. So if you're playing to 30% stadium capacity, there's a lot of schools and principals and ADs that might come out and say, look, we're not playing. So don't be surprised if you see that, because right now all we talked about is the kids and playing and are we going to play again, but we haven't looked at all the other repercussions of playing. And, when you hear the NFL and colleges talk about the capacity of the stadium and how many tickets they can sell and whatnot, it's a reality that we have to look at. And in high school, especially, depending on where you're at and what your budget is like and what your socioeconomic makeup in your neighborhood is like, there's a lot of schools that cannot afford to take losses like that. So they'll end up not playing football. So that's something else we had better think about when it comes time to play again. So, Ruben, I'm a conceptual guy. I don't like a route tree. I don't really teach per se a route tree by numbers. That's just the way we do it. We do everything conceptually, and then, all the routes get named, and then the concepts go together. And if we run snag, we're telling them that, hey, you got, you're running snag, you're running corner, you're running flat, or you're running bubble, or whatever it may be. And if we run, curl flat or whatever, hey, you got curl, you got spot, you got flat, you got post, you got dig, so rather than say you've got a 1, you've got a 3, you've got a 5, you've got a 2, you got a 4, rather than label passes, say, 247 spot or whatever, there's a million ways to communicate and call all that stuff, but we're a conceptual team. So we take the concepts and then we name the concepts with NFL teams, college teams, whatever it may be. And then, there's a play side and there's a back side. So, you'll have you might be running 3-man snag on the right with something else on the left, and your system of communication to your kids might be, Ringo snag or whatever, snag Ringo, or, whatever your protection is, however you build that in. But we are, answering your question, Ruben, we are a concept team. I am not a route tree guy. In saying that, I don't think there's anything wrong with route trees. I'm not saying that, I'm not blasting route trees at all. I'm just saying that's not what we do. Coffee grinds in an attempt to not chew tobacco. Yeah, I think so, Ruben, but there'd be some other people that argue with me and tell me no, which is fine. I'm okay with that. But there's some people out there that tell you that that's not as easy, or communicating it's not as easy, or you get locked into, different ways of communicating, and not communicating as well. But I like our concepts. I like how we communicate it. I like how we build a protection in, so it works for us. Yeah, Michael, you're not going to be the only one, unfortunately. But if you're going through, like we're going through an offensive change right now, and it stinks. But if you're going through a coaching change or a coordinator change, this is again, I don't think it's the easiest time right now to be doing it. But I will tell you that it may help or benefit a little bit because I think when you finally get going again, I think you'll get down to brass tacks and figure out exactly what you need to do and not all the things that you wanted to do going in and not maybe the plan you had going in. But now you're going to say, all right, look, we have to play football. We got to get these things on offense or defense taught. Let's do what's important. So I think in the long run, it may help. I can't prove that, but in the long run, I think it may actually help some people. Texas, they have approved live streaming this year for games. Yeah, I think that's going to be the next thing. Texas gets everything approved, and they probably have the money to do a lot of those things, and it's that important. Football's important in Florida, but we're miles behind Texas with facilities, with money, with a lot of things. So I'm not really sure if we can get that approved, but they better be. They better be. We had better be at least in the state of Florida, or at least people better be thinking about what they're going to do for games and attendance and tickets and who they're going to. If you have 30% capacity, how you're going to sell tickets, who you're going to sell them to, and can you make money or are you going to lose money? I think people better be thinking about that. Well, we were a gap scheme the last couple of years, Ruben, so we weren't running inside zone or wide zone. We were running gap scheme, so inside zone and wide zone is going to be a change schematically for offensive linemen. It's going to be a change schematically for running backs with how we run it and what we read. We were running our read scheme was a duo type scheme that was front side, so the meshes were front side. Now the quarterback on inside zone and tailback have to understand that it's a backside deal now. So we have to, we're coming from the pistols, so we've got to kind of mesh backside while trying to enter front side, which is a little bit more difficult than being sidecar when running inside zone. We haven't been a wide zone team. We were more of a jet power read team and a toss read team last year to get to the perimeter. And so now, running wide zone, that exchange is completely different for us. Personnel wise, we might use tight ends or Y off positions a little bit more. We haven't played with a tight end in a long time, so that's different. Coordinator has different terminology with how he calls formations, runs, and passes, so that's different. So there's a lot going on. Yeah, again, I agree with you guys that that's going to be tough, but at the same time, I think you're going to find that you may gain a little bit from the situation that we're in because you're going to get down to installing the things that you really need to install, and you're not going to screw around with all the fluff and the other stuff. You're going to figure out real quick what's your bread and butter on offense, what's your bread and butter on defense, how do you cut your teeth, where do you hang your hat, and because you don't have a choice. So I think it's going to help a little bit. Yeah, it's tough to follow, Ruben, especially when in the off season when you go to clinics and you watch stuff, and there's so much access to social media, and now with this pandemic, there's been so many Zoom meetings in colleges and letting you sit in on Zoom meetings and getting information out and everything else that I think now you're going to have so many people that are just flooded with information that they want to try and use. And the biggest thing as a coach is delineating what information is good for you as a coach to understand and know, but what information is best to use schematically with players, and that's always going to be the toughest part of the toughest sell. So it's the same thing every year with clinic season and spring ball season. If you get to go to colleges or whatever, you've got so much information that you've read studied, learned, and now you got to, you know, be able to disseminate how you want, what information you want to use, and how you can use it. I'd be interested to see how inside zone and wide zone and duo work out for you, Brandon, because conceptually, from the line standpoint and from the back, they're so different. And then if you're a gun team or a read team, duo is going to be a front side entry, and inside zone is going to be a backside entry. Um, so the running back understanding what points he needs to press, and quarterbacks kind of understanding where the reads are. Um, if it's doable, I would like to know, because I'm a big fan of the gap duo play that we run as a read play. And then we also, from our 20 personnel the last couple of years, we had several different ways to use the fullback um, to block different things so that we could RPO and block six in the box. So I'd love to not lose our duo play, but right now we are going to focus on inside zone, wide zone, and then I think we're going to get counter in as a gap play. As of right now, that's the goal. So, yeah, we've had some people discuss pay for live streaming, and I think that's a good idea if you can't sell tickets. How they're going to do that or who's going to do it, I don't know, because obviously the schools would have to be the ones that get the money, not the companies that live stream, or there'd have to be some type of revenue share between that, because it's down to the schools losing money. And then here's the other thing. Like, I know in our area where I am, we have a hard time getting buses until a certain point, because every bus that we use and every bus driver that we use is out on routes running the middle schools and the high schools and then the elementary schools. So now all of a sudden, if we've got a social distancing deal and we got to put 40 kids on a bus and they can't all sit, next to each other in seats, do we now need 4 buses to go to a football game? Do we now extra buses, extra bus drivers? That's going to be another thing that I don't think people really think about, is transportation. So so think about it this way, Coach Flores. Think about power without the backside guard pulling. So you have a gap scheme on the front. You have a fullback that can, or a sniffer that can kick out, but you don't have a puller backside. So you basically have an old-fashioned blast type theory where everything is gapped down and then the fullback kicks out. But what we did with it was similar in nature to what Nevada used to do with Kaepernick and all that. Is we made it a read play for us. So we made it a front side A gap entry point, so that the end had to, if the end wanted to play the dive, it gave us enough time for the quarterback to pull and get around them. And then we did some things with our splits to help. But we turned a duo play into our version of zone read, which back when I learned it was, people were calling it the Zier play, which meant, zone veer. So we were essentially using veer blocking, which is basically what the duo scheme is kind of about. It's a gap scheme, which is basically what veer is, but we didn't use an inside veer path. We put the back in the front side A gap, pressing downhill, reading off the play side inside linebacker to the front side. So you don't read a down lineman, you read a linebacker. And then we incorporated some different ways to kick the end. We made a slight change where we could ISO off it. We made a change where we could wham a 3 technique or a 1 technique off it. So we had some wrinkles to the duo play to give it a little bit more flexibility, and so that we could run some of our RPOs off the duo play. But duo in general, in its easiest terms or explanation, is a power play without a puller. That's basically what you're doing. Now, to take it a step further, obviously your front side double team won't go to the backside backer. It'll go to the front side backer, and then you'll have a backside double team, and that's kind of where the term duo comes from. You're looking for 2 double teams. So you'd love to run it at the 3 technique so that you get a double on the 3 and a double on the 1, if possible. Or if you have a tight end in and you can run it at an under front, and you can get a double on a 5 and a double on a shade. But um, duo in general, the terminology means two double teams. You're trying to get two double teams at up front on the line of scrimmage. So whereas power, you would only have your front side double. Duo, because there's no puller, you're looking to get two double teams. So so I talked about with our head coach, talking about what's next. As far as I know, he wants wide zone as our base, duo number 2. Yeah, I agree with that. Obviously, if he's a guy that's coming from the NFL, I would think wide zone's a good place to start. If you can get it done with your kids, and I think duo next is not bad. We want to go wide zone to inside zone, because inside zone is going to be what we RPO off of and where our read game comes from, because from the pistol, our wide zone will basically be a deal where we have to play action and naked off it, kind of like the 49ers do a bunch. So we won't be RPOing off of our wide zone. So we want to get the inside zone second for that reason. Yes, if you were running duo, Ruben, your tailback would read the play side, front side linebacker. So if you were running it to the 3 technique side and doubling the 3 to the Mike, you'd be reading the Mike. If the Mike fits the A gap, the tailback bounces. If the Mike fits over the top, the tailback stays inside, because that helps you set the leverage up for the blocks, because you got to understand, you're not scooping and overtaking, you're actually gapping down. So your tailback has to understand how to read that, so that he sets the blocks of the lineman up, because there aren't any overtakes or scoops. They're straight down blocks. So the easiest way to kind of explain that to the tailback is, if we're blocking people down, you don't want to run into down blocks. You want to make your cuts off of those. So based on where the Mike fits, you'll know who's going to come off. So if the guard comes off to the Mike, your leverage is on the 3 technique. You want to go behind that. If the tackle has to come off on the Mike, then your leverage is inside of the 3 technique, and you want to hammer that up in the A gap. Well, we originally started running the concept after watching Nevada do a bunch of it with Colin Kaepernick. And, I looked at the blocking scheme, and it was certainly more of a veer scheme, not a zone scheme, even though they described it as a zone scheme. And then I saw Ohio State and a lot of other people running gap veer type schemes with an A gap run that looked like an inside zone. And then we just kind of fooled with it. Going back about 8-10 years, we just kind of fooled with it a little bit, and then didn't really know it was the duo scheme until I went and heard somebody at a college talk about it, and I didn't know what it was. And when I asked what it was, they explained it, and I said, well, we've been doing that for 7-8 years. I just didn't know that it was called duo. So duo was an NFL term, and again, the term itself means 2 double teams. That's why the play's called duo, because you're, instead of pulling a guard and getting a back block, you end up with 2 double teams. So but they do it a lot different in the NFL. A lot of compressed sets, working receivers down inside to safeties, and if the ball bounces, it bounces to a corner that's unblocked. And so it's a way different scenario than how we did it. But in general, it's gap down without a puller, so it's a duo play. It would be the same thing, Ruben. Anything that we have on Zier is basically the duo play. So any videos on YouTube I had that out there, or anything I might have had on my Patreon website out there, if it's our Zier play, it's duo. It's the same thing. I learned it as Zier a couple years back, had no idea what duo was, and then, like I said, I went to a college and heard a guy talk about it, and I said, well, can you explain what duo is? And he explained it, and I said, well, hell, we've been doing that for 8 years. I just didn't know it was called duo. So it was something that we had been doing for a little while, and we called it Zier, kind of a combination zone veer. And then I found out that the big timers called it duo, so we started describing it as duo, and then ran into a couple issues here or there, because on YouTube there were some people that were NFL type people that they started saying that that's not duo, that's not what duo was meant to be. And my point was, duo is basically 2 double teams. It's a gap scheme without a puller. It's power without a puller in its truest form. And I've heard NFL O-line coaches say that it is. So if we wrinkle it a little bit to run it how we run it, we're still running a duo scheme, even though it's not the same one. But people get crazy with shit like that all the time. And, there's people that are just kind of adamant about certain things, and they'll tell you that that's not duo. It's not the way Jim McNally wanted duo to be. And at that point, you just stop talking and say, all right, we agree to disagree. You don't even go any further. But I think, at least in my opinion, terminology and formations obviously is going to be different, things of that nature. But I think when you go from gap schemes to zone schemes up front with your linemen, I think that is where the biggest, I think that's where the biggest change is and the most work. Obviously, passing concepts will change a little bit, but you know, there's a ton of passing concepts out there, but at the end of the day, there's only so many. So I don't think it's going to get too crazy with, obviously some people like some things more than they like others. Maybe they have a different way of teaching the quarterback, but I'll put that all in my offensive coordinator's hands. I gave him the job. He's going to do it. So however he wants to teach the passing game, the concepts and the reads, then I'll certainly let him do that. But, I don't think it's going to get, that part of it won't get that much different. Thank you, Ruben. I appreciate you, bud. In my opinion, though, I really think going from gap schemes to zone schemes with your offensive lineman is a huge, huge difference. And then with your backs, like we have two really good young backs that I like a lot, but they happen to be backs that kind of grab the football and do what they want to do with it. Trying to get them to understand blocking schemes and point of attacks, it can sometimes be an issue, but they do a lot of good things after they get the ball. So, you're banging your head against the wall trying to get them to understand that they could be so much better if they would learn how to read things and do things, but at the same time, they have some success. So, you're trying to break a habit of a kid that's had a lot of success as a player and as a running back at lower levels of football. And now you're trying to incorporate how to read, zone schemes and how to set blocks up and when the ball is going to, bend, bang, or bounce. And, try to understand how on wide zone how the ball is going to get to the perimeter. But if it doesn't get to the perimeter and it goes up inside, we now have to read the next thing inside our original read to see how far back the ball might actually go, trying to see how wide our offensive lineman can actually get on wide zone to kind of pair it up and see if we can get the tailback and the center matched up the way they should be, so that when the ball does go back, it looks like it's going all the way back behind the center, but that's just because the center has moved 3 to 4 to 5 yards wider because of how you're teaching, your O lineman to try and get the wide zone blocked. So, that's tough for running backs, especially younger running backs. So, yeah, Brandon, it's going to take a ton of time. I mean, I think wide zone in and of itself takes a ton of time. That's why we've always kind of stayed away from it. I love the theory. I love the play. I know how effective the play is, and I know how much of a pain in the ass it is to stop. But we've always shied away from it because I think it's very time intensive and labor intensive. And I think wide zone is one of those things that you can't really dabble in. You've got to do. So we're going to it now, though. I like our backs. I feel like they could be really good backs. I feel like wide zone in and of itself is its own counter, and I feel like you don't need as much vertical movement. You can just kind of get a body on a body and displace some defenses horizontally and make your backs understand how to set blocks up and create some holes in the defense without having to physically impose your will on other people if you're not good enough up front. So, I'm sold on it. It's the direction we're going. It's just going to take a lot of time, especially coming from – it'd be hard enough coming from inside zone because inside zone and wide zone are so different. But at least in a zone theory, the kids have an understanding of a zone theory. To come from a gap scheme to a zone scheme, I think, is a big difference. Some people say no, but I personally think it's a pretty big difference. So, but the good thing is they are young, so they really don't have, they don't have a lot of bad habits under their belt inside of our offense. One kid's going to be a sophomore, the other kid's going to be a junior. So I wouldn't say they have terrible habits in our offense. They have some bad habits just from being younger kids and being better physically than other players and being able to grab the ball and do what they want to do, which you can't do in high school, not against the schedule we play. So I don't think it'll take us as long with the backs. Yeah, I try to stay away from that argument, Ruben. because I think a lot of people in general think it's the same play. Um, to me, wide zone would be a theory that you aren't hell bent on getting everything reached. You're going to try and get something reached, but if you can't, you're going to physically move it or knock people out and off the ball. And to me, outside zone would be something that you're hell bent on leather getting the ball to the perimeter. I think a lot of people had gone to more pin and pull schemes to get the ball outside because you find out in zone schemes, whether it's outside zone or wide zone, that a lot of times the ball doesn't go to the perimeter. There may be some slight differences if you talk to NFL guys. There may be some slight differences in aiming points, but wide zone to me, and the reason I use the terminology wide zone is because I look at it as saying we're going to try and get the perimeter and we're going to try and get things reached. But if I don't get things, if I can't get things reached, I'm going to give my offensive lineman a chance to just knock something out and move it out if they can't get it reached. I'm not going to tell them, hell bent for leather to the sideline to try and get it reached. If you can't reach it and they won't allow you to reach it, then we're going to let them kind of knock it off or knock it out so the ball can go up under. So that's kind of my image of the difference between wide zone and outside zone. So, but defensively, we're not making any changes at all. The only change we're going to make is, I think, in our 4-man deals, we're going to use the Mike more as our fourth rusher rather than rotate some of the other backers. I think our Mike's a better rusher than our other kids are, and I think our other kids understand coverages better than our Mike does. So we are basically going to stay pretty much the same. Maybe mix up some movement patterns, but we're going to look at playing some base defense behind our 4-man stuff. Last year we played all one rat behind our 4-man anytime we added a fourth, but probably going to stay with our one rat stuff because I don't like changing run fits when we go from our base stuff to our movements. And if we slant the front and end up with an open A gap as opposed to an open B gap, our linebackers in the stack aren't used to that. So I don't think we're going to make many changes. Yeah, I think that's a great question that Ruben brings up. And again, I think you'd get 50 different answers if you talk to 50 different people. But, to me, outside zone is something that tries to get outside, and wide zone is something that aims outside. But if you can't get outside, you're perfectly fine with the ball going inside. So, I don't know. Then there's some people who call, it's a stretch play. Well, stretch, wide zone, outside zone. I just want to make sure that our coaches and our kids are on the same page so that when we talk about it, we know what we're trying to do. Outside of that, if I have to explain to somebody what we're trying to do because there's confusion between outside zone and wide zone, I have no problem explaining that to somebody. With our kids, though, and our coaches, I want everybody to know that this is the theory and this is what we're trying to get done. And that's the most important. It doesn't really matter what anybody else says or thinks. Now, obviously, if you're at a clinic or if you're trying to explain something to somebody and they're confused because your terminology is different, then that's a sticking point for learning gains. But as far as I'm concerned, if your kids know what you're trying to do, it doesn't really matter. We're basically aiming, for us, we're going to aim at the crack of the tight end or the crack of a ghost tight end. If you listen to any wide zone stuff from Alex Gibbs or anybody else, they're going to tell you that by the time your running back gets his third foot in the ground, his read should be made. So by the time his third foot is in the ground, if you've got it reached, the ball should go outside. If you don't have it reached, you're never going to get it reached, so the ball should go back under. They're going to tell you that the center and the tailback need to work in conjunction. If you have a center that's past the tailback, you don't have a tailback. If you have a tailback that's past the center, you don't have a center. So they're going to tell you that those two need to work hand in hand. But in general for us, we're going to aim at the crack of the tight end, if not maybe just outside leg of the tight end or outside leg of a ghost tight end. And we're going to be reading end man on the line, and if it's hooked, we're going to keep it out there. If we can't hook it and we're knocking it out, the ball's going to come back inside. So, but again, I don't think that's set in stone either. I mean, there's people that have different. Heck, I think there's NFL teams that have different aiming points and landmarks for their back. So I don't think that part to me is a little bit more trivial. As long as you understand what you're reading and how you're blocking it, I think your aiming point is a little bit more trivial. I think the wider you aim, the better chance you have for cutback, because now you're going to make the defense kind of pursue a little bit harder because of your aiming point. And you're going to get them to flow a little bit differently because of your aiming point. So I would think that's why your aiming point would be important. It's to get that stretch on the defense and to make it appear like it is a perimeter run play, so those linebackers start to run. And if they don't tempo the football, or if they don't stay on the near hip and they get past it and you get things kind of ran out, the ball goes back under them. So that's what I would look at. I would think for us, probably that armpit to a little bit wider than the pec, but probably that armpit to bicep area on the front side, and then the backhand's always going to be. I think we're probably going to teach that hook it hand to make sure that nothing crosses your face. So, that front hand's working to reach, and that head placement is working to get that hat to that pec or that armpit to get that helmet there to reach it. But if you can't reach it, that's, we're going to take that hook it hand and we're going to make sure we're slamming that hook it hand in there so that it doesn't cross our face on movement. But at the same time, now, if we can't get our helmet outside and we can't get it reached, now along with that hook it hand riding up in there, we're going to knock it out. So that, that backside, like Alex Gibbs would call that hook it hand, is that physically they're kind of grabbing and latching on to make sure that you don't get that spike under, because that inside penetration and that spike under getting up the field will absolutely destroy wide zone theory. So you got to be able to play with that hook it hand, especially if you don't have help coming from you, if you're not, working a combination with somebody, if you're by yourself. So if you had a guard and a tackle working to a 3 and a 5, and, if the center is going to chain it all the way with them, then you can pass some things off. But if the center is not with them, then those two got to understand that they're kind of almost soloed on that wide zone theory, not combination. So you got to make sure that backside hook it hand gets in there. And I think that would probably go to the hip or the rib cage, and the front one would go more towards that front side pec armpitish type area, with the helmet working its way outside. But I've heard it taught a lot of different ways. And I've heard, people do different things with their hand placement. But I think for us, that's in general what we're going to work on. Gideon, I don't know if you're an O-line guy, that may not help you as much, because they probably get a little bit more involved with it than that. But in general, in theory, that's about what we're going to try and do. There's a lot of good, you can watch a lot of stuff on YouTube. There's a lot of great wide zone stuff out there on YouTube. There's a guy, Coach Cadutti, Codutti. He's got some great wide zone stuff. There's a ton of great wide zone stuff out there. So, my advice to you would be, if you want to get into wide zone, wide zone, just watch NFL games, watch the 49ers, watch most NFL teams are pretty good running wide zone, and then study Alex Gibbs. Alex Gibbs is about he's the father of wide zone stuff. So study Alex Gibbs. Interesting question, Coach Greenfield. I think the teacher pay is going to be more of a problem than it's going to be an impact. I think obviously it's going to help us get some younger guys willing to enter the profession and teach, if you can now make decent money with benefits. But I think it's going to cause a lot of strife amongst current teachers, because if you tell people that have been teaching for 20 years, that are 45, 50 years old, teaching for 20 years, that this 23-year-old fresh out of college with a degree makes the same, if not more money than them, I think you're going to run into a lot of problems. That's just my personal opinion with the teacher pay. We are 3-3, Michael. I don't know about anybody else. There are some things we do that are similar to 4-2-5 in nature, but we are a 3-3 team with split field coverage. Our coverages are the same as when we were a 4-2-5 team. No, I don't think we mentioned it on. I don't think I mentioned it on here tonight. I don't think you missed it. It is interesting though. Probably 2-3 years ago, if you would have mentioned wide zone in a high school setting, you wouldn't have found a lot of people that were using wide zone stuff. There were a couple people, and the ones that were good at it were really good and giving people a lot of trouble. But now, now almost everybody is starting to talk about it. More people are knowledgeable about wide zone. They know what it is. They know what the theory is. And now there's more high school teams running it. And I think the success of the 49ers on offense, and then maybe some of the stuff the Titans were doing and some of the stuff the NFL teams were doing, I think now all of a sudden you're going to see a lot more people learn more about wide zone and see if if they can get it done at the high school level. We start too high. We're a split field coverage team, so we start too high. I am not a fan. I am not a fan of 3-3, 3-3 stack one high stuff with movement every down. That's just not the way I want to play football. So, it's a split field coverage. It's very much TCU in nature. Going back 10, 15 years ago to where I read some articles and heard Gary Patterson talk about how they play defense. So very much coverage-wise, that in theory with quarters base, quarters toolbox stuff, split field coverage, too high. It's going to look, first two back sets, it's going to look like 8-man front, almost all the time. But, we have a safety on the weak side that can be up or back depending on the coverages we're playing. And, we try to make it look like too high as much as possible. And then it ends up being split field, but we don't play, we do play some man free stuff. We play very little 3 deep. We play more Tampa 2 as our variation of 3 deep, but we don't play any generic 1 high things. And yeah, I could see how the jet play would be good tied with that Gideon, but I worry about the jet hitting so fast, the kid coming so fast that he can't make the proper reads to get back under if the ball needs to go under. Jet is usually more of an outside zone theory where everybody is hell-bent for leather, circle the wagon, and everybody run to the sideline, elephants on parade because you need the ball to get out there. We always try to start from a too high structure, and then if the safety is going to be down, we try and kind of spin down to it. But again, at the end of the day, you got to be good at what you're doing. Spinning down, spinning down is good if you can do it. But if you're so worried about spinning down that your kids end up not in the right place or not in the right coverage or not in the right force or run fit, and it's really kind of irrelevant. I say more split field than I say too high stuff because, when you're a split field team, you're not necessarily always playing too high stuff. You're playing a lot of quarter, half, and basically means that you're treating formations differently on each side of the ball based on the deployment of the receivers, and you're not playing a set quarters across the board, or you're not playing a set cover 3 or a cover 2 across the board. A lot of the times you're playing something on the read side that is completely different than the away side. So that's how I look at split field coverages. And, as far as too high to say, how many times are we truly too high safeties? Most of the time we're rolling or spinning with that backside safety, and he's down a lot of the time. So, I don't know how many times we necessarily are playing with too high safeties, but we are certainly split field and we are certainly middle of the field open. Do you use the overhang to the receiver strength or 2x2 to the field? Uh, Whatever we declare is going to be the strength in 2x2. So if the ball's on a hash mark, we'd probably say it's the field. If the ball's in the middle, it's either going to be the side that the back is on. If the back's in the pistol, it's probably going to be the throwing hand of the quarterback. But if it's 2x2 and it's balanced, our free safety has to make um, so, um, the free safety's got to make some type of declaration of where the strength is in 2x2 since it's balanced. But for us in our three safety system, the free safety is going to make a passing strength declaration, and the safety to that side now becomes the down outside back or strong safety, and the safety to the other side becomes the whip or the rover or the weak safety. But we don't switch sides, so both of our safeties have to know how to play the down part and the back part. So. Well, the one thing I have noticed, Coach Lucci, is we've had to set up our drills, and even the kids that aren't involved, we're trying to do more drills that have more players involved so that they are, you know, 6 feet apart and involved, because when they're not involved, then they got to stand in line 6 feet apart and 6 feet behind the people that are going. And then we're trying to do drills where they're not really crossing anybody. So if we're doing like broad jumps or anything like that, it's all right. You're going to broad jump down to the other end, and then that next group's going to come down and broad jump, and then that we're not going to jog back into a line or jog back around, because then you end up passing. It's almost impossible to not pass each other. But even the way we rotate on the field from station to station, we rotate clockwise so that we don't pass each other, and try to do everything we can to stay you know uh, as compliant as we can to the social distancing stuff. So, I've noticed that drills have changed from there, and I think we're getting a few more reps because we're incorporating more kids into drills just for spacing. So I think we're getting a few more reps. I remember you saying something like you lost in the district final and played a game the following week. Yeah, we used to run into situations where not necessarily a district final, but the last game of the season might have ended up being a team that you played first week of the playoffs. That happened to us one time, I think. So, district wise, usually your district ends the 9th or 10th week, not the last week. So we've never really played a final district game and then played that team the next week. But we have played a team week 10 that we ended up playing week 1 of the playoffs. So that was a little bit strange, but we have districts now in our classifications, and the district champ goes automatically, and then there's 4 other teams in the region that get an at-large bid, and then you're kind of seeded from there, and then one plays 8, and so on and so forth, and then it goes that way through the region and then through the next region, and until you end up in the state. Probably think you got to win 4 games to get to the state title game, something along those lines. I think there's 64 teams in it, so. Yeah, every state's different, and we just switched 2 years ago from what we were. We used to have districts, and the district champ and the runner up would get in, and then there were some districts that only had 3 teams, and teams were getting in the playoffs with 2-8 records. So they changed that. So now it's the district champ, and then 4 at-large teams based on a point system that they came up with. So, but our schedule is, the other thing that's different is I can play whoever outside of my district. I can play whoever I want, and I don't have to, I don't necessarily play all teams that are the same size. So we're a 5A team. Last year our non-conference games were all 6A, 7A, 8A teams just because of travel and convenience and county games and money and gate. So, I know in a lot of other states, big schools don't play smaller schools, and you kind of stay within your classification. Well, in Florida, you can play whoever you want outside of the district, and you make your schedule outside of the district. So, our first week we open up with an 8A school, which is about as big as you can get in Florida. And then last year we finished the season with a 7A school, and in between that there were mostly I think there was two other 5A schools on the schedule, I think, and then outside of the district there was an 8A, 2 7As, and maybe a 6A, or an 8A, a 7A, and a 6A. So 3 of our 5 non-district games were against larger schools, but that impacts when you get to the playoffs and the point system, that impacts it because sometimes it'll be different for playing a larger classification school, and then their strength of schedule and your strength of schedule has an impact on your point system. So it's all there's all kind of numbers involved in how they do it. The easiest way is just win your damn district and get in. So last year, week 9 or next to last game of the season, we're playing for the district title and we get shut out 29-0. So that's our fault, and props to the team that beat us, but we're in the district final. We don't need help from anybody else. We don't need an at-large bid. Just win the damn game. So that's the easiest way. Yeah, every state, you hear horror stories from all over the place about teams that get in, teams that don't get in, playoffs. It'd be nice if there was one set system, but there's so many different numbers involved in states and so many different schools and the amount of teams that play that you just can't do that. So yeah, when you play with two open B gaps, Ruben, it's alarming for a lot of people. You know, uh, we are going to move. We're definitely going to take some of those gaps away at times. We're going to get to 4-man, 5-man, 6-man deals. So we're not going to base out of movement. We're going to base out of a 3-3 stack. Both B gaps open, but we play our 5 techniques like anybody else in a 4-2-5 would. If we get down blocks, we are going to squeeze and spill like crazy, and we're going to gap exchange. And so we're going to take those B gaps away in different ways. But it's not for everybody. It's different to look at. A lot of people think, you're going to get gashed with inside runs. A lot of people are going to try and formation you to get you out of the stack. But, I can tell you this, in the 2 years or 3 years now that we've gone to it as a base defense, we are 100 times better statistically against the run than we were. So now I did have a few good players mixed in there. I had a D1 defensive end that's going to Liberty, that's at Liberty right now. So we had some good players, and that definitely helps. But our numbers from the 3-3, from the 4-2-5 to the 3-3, our run game numbers went astronomically lower, and we did a way better job. And I think that's simply because the run fits and the way we taught the run fits became a lot easier. Yes, it was different. Yes, it was different from even fronts, so it was different to block for teams, and I think that had a lot to do with it. Now everybody knows we run it, so they have 2 years of film to kind of figure out how we do it. But I think the biggest deal, besides having a few good players, I think the biggest deal was the fact that we made the run fit so simplistic and so easy that we could replicate them more often. Yes, there were some things that gave us issues, but the other things that shouldn't give us issues when we do it right, we were able to do it right more often. That's what I believe in, firmly believe in, that our simplicity and our run fits allowed us to do things right more often. A few years ago, I coached a team that went 2-8 and made the playoffs, gave the first seed a run for their money, only losing by 10, got in due to strength of schedule. Yeah, I mean, shoot, I've seen, you see 8s beat 1s, and in the NCAA tournament, you see 16s beat 1s and whatnot. I mean, it's not saying that it can't happen, but if you go 8-2 and get left out of the playoffs because you finished third in your district and your only 2 losses were 2 district teams, and a team goes 2-8 and finishes second in their district because they only had 3 teams and one of the teams was 0-10 or 1-9, you're going to kind of be a little bit frustrated about it because an 8-2 season, you can't even get to the playoffs when a 2-8 team does. But, in Florida, with it being so large and the numbers of teams and how many teams you have playing, they're never going to get it right. You're trying to go by size and classification, and you're trying to go by geography so that you don't have to drive across the state to play a district game. And, unfortunately, with all those factors involved, there's going to be some districts that aren't always easy, and there's going to be some districts that have 3 to 4 teams. They've tried their best to make it even districts with 5 or 6 teams instead of districts with 8 and then districts with 3, because how is that fair if your district has 8 teams and you got to be 1 or 2 out of 8 and another school's got to be 1 or 2 out of 3? There's no way that's fair. So they've tried their best. The state does some good things, some bad things, but I can't knock them with the district stuff. It's been fine as far as I'm concerned. All right, guys, what else you got? I'm going to stay on for about another 5 or 10 minutes. It's 9:15. I'll stay on to 9:25, so I'll stay on for another 10 minutes. Now, I will say this about the playoffs in every state. A lot of the times, it kind of fluctuates and changes year to year because they're trying to make it better and get it better. So, there's always going to be changes from year to year, I think. Yeah, Ruben. There's so many ways to play the nose and odd front. You can two gap them, you can lag them behind the center, you can move them and spark them. So, you could have a kid that you're going to move and have a wrestling lacrosse type body that is, 5'8", 5'9", 180 pounds, but he moves really well. And now you can disrupt the center that way. You can put an NFL style 290-pound, 300-pound nose on there and try and two gap them and do it that way. So, I think in general in odd front stuff, if your nose is good, you've got a chance. Every high school is going to be different. You're going to see some high schools play odd front defense with three kids under 200 pounds, and then you're going to see some schools that play odd front defense with three kids that are 240 or heavier. So I think a lot of it is just personnel. Personally, for us, we're a little bit smaller up front, so that's why we go odd front stuff. It fits our personnel a little bit better. And being a 3-3 stack team, 5 DBs and 3 safeties, it's a lot easier for me to find linebackers and safeties than it is to find D linemen. So that's it. The scheme also fits us better. System was flawed in the past. 6 wins was an auto bid. So many teams would load up with yeah. Anytime you get to a system where there's an auto bid with 6 wins, then people start loading their schedule up to get to 6 wins, and that's an issue. So our base front would be what I would consider oaky, but we play 5-0-5, and our base front is what we base out of. So I think most people would consider oaky more head up 4 techniques, 4-0-4 than 5-0-5. So really don't know what you would call 5-0-5, but that's what we base out of. And then we do play some bear stuff. It's more of a pressure deal for us. And then we also play some 4-I-0, 4-I tight front, in certain situations, but we don't base out of tight and we don't base out of bear. We base out of 5-0-5. Yeah, even I know who Muskegon is. Being from Florida, I've heard of Muskegon before. So obviously in that region, that's a tough ask. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you watching. Thanks for dropping knowledge once again, Coach. Thank you, Ruben. I appreciate it, buddy. Yeah, Coach Greenfield. For me, I call it oaky, but I would think, oaky coming from the old Bud Wilkinson stuff, who was one of the first guys to kind of employ the front. To me, I would think oaky would be more head up, what I would call 4 techniques. 4-0-4, head up tackle, head up center, head up tackle, where we kind of play 5 techniques like we're an even front. That's how we play. So, 5-0-5 for me is what I kind of consider oaky. So, it's good when people agree, but not everybody agrees. Yeah, I would think, Tom, more, in my opinion, just studying the history of football a little bit, I would think oaky would be more head up. That's just me. Again, just an opinion on things that I've studied, but I would think oaky. Most people, if you said oaky, would think head up. Coach Lucci, if you're asking me, I'm probably 5 hours north of Fort Myers. Yes, Michael, if the clinic is on, you will see me. I was just at the Embassy Suites with my daughter's birthday the past 2 days. It's still a great place. Pool is beautiful. It's right on the ocean. The setup is great. So hopefully we can get there and get it going again, because we love the location. We had a great turnout last year, and unfortunately planning it now, and, we haven't been able to do as much planning and as much as far as we don't even have a date yet. We don't know. They're so behind on their weddings and everything else that they're doing that getting a date in January is going to be tough. We don't know what the travel restrictions are going to be like. We don't know what social distancing is going to be like. So if we do have, if we do get it booked we don't know what we got to do with chairs, how many we can fit in the room. Just a lot of unknowns right now, and especially when you're a small business operation, having a second year clinic, I imagine the Glaziers and the Nikes of the world will be a little bit better at adjusting than we are right now. We kind of just figured out what we like and how we like it, and we just got a clientele and a base of people that really like the clinic that we put on and the site that we have. And year two, instead of rolling and making it better, now we have no idea what we're going to do. But if we have it, Michael, you will certainly see me there. Yeah, they do have fire pits out by the pool. They've got fire pits that they keep rolling. I think um, I don't think they're true fire pits with wood, but it's an semblance of that, and I think it does put off some heat. So it's more like a heated furnace type deal that has a visual effect to it. But it looks pretty cool, and in the temperature, the weather we had last year was awesome. It was like the first night we did the social outside, it was like 65 degrees in January outside, so nobody had to go back in. They were able to drink and have a good time, and the bars were outside, right outside the two speaker rooms we had. So, knock on wood, we got great weather last year, so hopefully that continues again. So, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for tonight, guys. I will see you next week. I'll be on again live at some point next week. Like I said, I just did another podcast for the Coaches Lounge last night, and then I'm going to do sometime next week or the week after, I'm doing a Zoom meeting with guys from Germany, which is just so which 4-2? No, I'm St. John's University in New York. I'm not. Everybody gets that confused. I'm not a Gagliardi guy at all. Wish I was, but I'm a St. John's University in New York guy. But the fact that I get invited to do, I would have to, Coach Greenfield, I would have to tell you, let me look at my Twitter. It's in my messages. Let's see. Well, it's still going on great times with the German coaches community, which expands to some coaches from other European countries. During the last 2 months, we had 20 different coaches online helping to make the game better over here. Most of the times, there are about 15 to 20 coaches attending the live. Best witches from Germany. Germany, Cologne. I guess the Cologne Crocodiles, under 19, 2019 All-State champions in Germany. So I guess somewhere in that region or somewhere around there. But yeah, I appreciate you guys being on. Like I said, the fact that we get people on here from different countries and overseas, and the fact that I'm going to do a Zoom meeting with guys from Germany, and just all the opportunities that I get now, basing from a start on YouTube, and the fact that we get 15, 20 guys a night when we go YouTube live on things that I don't even announce. You guys are getting notifications, but I don't announce that I'm going live. I don't set it up like these Zoom meetings or anything else. I just pop online and you guys come on, and we usually have over 15 to 30 people on. So I hope you guys have a good 4th. Enjoy yourselves. Have a good weekend. Stay safe and healthy from pandemic and everything else. Stay safe and healthy with fireworks. And again, appreciate everything you guys do for me, giving the opportunity to do stuff like this. We'll do it sometime next week when I check my schedule and see when I'm doing these these Zoom meetings and these any other podcasts that I got going on. So appreciate you guys. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.